I think we saw, just by the nature of the debate last night, that it's become a lot more acrimonious, a lot more vitriolic. The Times leader today calls it a caustic contest. I think that's a very accurate description of what happened last night.
I would start paying it down in 3 years.
Liz, that's simply not right. You promised almost 40 billion.
Now, it was very bitter. From about 15 minutes in, there was a moment where Rishi Sunak felt compelled to interject Truss on when she was talking about paying off the COVID debt starting in 3 years' time. And from that original interjection onwards, it was a very, very bitter debate. But on the economy, there are genuine and very important differences between the two candidates. And although it seemed like a more personally difficult contest between the two of them last night, and there were certainly warring words in a kind of worse nature, I think, than we've seen before. There was actually quite a substantial debate about the impact of tax cuts and the viability of tax cuts in the middle of a cost of living crisis.
The question is, should we pay that bill ourselves, or do we put it on the country's credit card and pass the tab to our children and grandchildren to take care of? Now, I don't think that's right.
We would start paying down the debt in 3 years' time. COVID was a 1 in 100 years event.
I think the problem that Rishi Sunak had last night was that he communicated that in what Liz Truss's spokesperson has called an aggressive mansplaining way. There were a number of occasions where he spoke over her, but you will obviously know that Rishi Sunak, kind of 24 points behind in the most recent YouGov poll, he will have gone into the debate last night knowing that to persuade Conservative members, who are those who will vote in this contest, that he will have had to do something quite extraordinary, and that these debates will have to be, for him at least, quite a transformative forum if he's going to be able to come out of this as the winner.
So on the subject of, we'll look at the two candidates one by one. Let's start with Rishi Sunak, because you've already mentioned him. There was quite a bit of debate online about his interrupting of Liz Truss kind of early on, although that did stop after a while. He was the one who got the round of applause, though, wasn't he? I mean, he got one, if not two. And the first one was when he said he was asked about his kind of moneyed background, and he said, "Well, you know, I'm very proud of it. My parents worked hard, etc., etc." And that played very well with the Conservative voting audience. So, which do you think people will remember from last night? The interrupting and the mansplaining, or the fact that you know he got at least one, if not two, rounds of applause?
Yeah, it's interesting because the audience last night in Stoke-on-Trent were 2019 Conservative voters. So those people who delivered the Conservatives that historic majority in 2019. And there were 3 rounds of applause last night, and all for Rishi Sunak. Although to call them rounds of applause, I think might be slightly generous, because
a smattering of applause.
They felt quite tepid. And I do think the most notable of those was, as you say, his very robust defence, and a very impassioned defence that many think he holds extremely genuinely, of his parents working, as he says, extremely hard to pay for his education. And that is something which Tory voters will like, and Tory members will like too. It's classic Conservative script. But if you look at the Snap poll from last night, Truss nearly 10-point lead among Conservative voters, even though it was more of a dead heat in the general public. Now, I think you can probably gauge from that if Truss is nearly 10 points ahead with voters, she's probably going to be a bit further ahead with members. And even if Rishi Sunak were to have come out kind of in a dead heat with voters or members last night, I still think that doesn't bode super well, considering that he's got a huge mountain to climb in order to be able to beat Truss. I mean, you know, the members are going to start voting in the next few days, many of them expected to vote extremely early. So this week is absolutely crucial for Rishi Sunak to come back from what is actually a really far behind position at the moment.
And Liz Truss has been said in these debates to have been hitherto a bit wooden, not a very good performer. But a lot of the commentary in the Times today from a couple of the Times writers, including Quentin Letts, Matthew Paris, etc., they're saying that she had improved.
I think that's definitely true. I think I read in that piece somebody saying that you can see that she embodies the frontrunner status. And there was a sense with Liz Truss last night that she needn't have performed fantastically well to have maintained her lead, but she just needed to tread water. And so in that sense, I think the stakes are somewhat lower for Liz Truss, especially seeing, as you say, the original debate performance from Truss weren't particularly well received, and it wasn't seen that she had performed particularly strongly. And last night she really was. I think she was definitely a beneficiary of the BBC split screen. So when Rishi Sunak was interjecting and speaking over her, you could see her kind of deeply furrowed brow and displeasure at that point. And at one point, Sophie Rayworth, the host, having to interrupt Sunak and say, "Please let Liz Truss finish her point." I think the way that the debate was formatted benefited Liz Truss in that way. But you're right that she was, even when Rishi Sunak, desperate to get that point across about her own economic advisor saying that interest rates under her tax cuts would climb as high as 7%, even in light of that barrage of questions from Sunak, Liz Truss did hold firm. And I do think her advisors last night will have been content with her performance.
Very interesting. Lara, thank you. We'll speak to you again. Lara Spirit, reporter for the Times Red Box.